Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to every single one of you for coming, and especially to the host. One of them traveled all the way from South Africa. Despite delays, she ran to the airport. So I want to take a second to introduce every single one of the panelists. So to our farthest left, we have Joe Wiseman, the head of Insomniac Music Group.
Hello.
He's present here as, for me, one of the first believers of Afro House in the United States. About 2 years ago, he signed my record Cete with Blondish, and I'm very grateful for his contribution towards the genre. We have to his right Andrew Kelsey, the founder of Liaison Music Group.
Hello, y'all.
He's probably for me one of the coolest agents. He's represented some of the biggest names in the industry, from Solomon
Thank you, Francis.
to Marco Corolla. Today he's working very closely with Carlita, and I've been blessed enough to be working with him these past few months. And he's also signed Night Freak, which is part of the Afro House movement. And to Andrew's right, we have Megan, from DJ Mag.
Hello. Ooh. That was really loud.
Yeah, she's coming all the way from Portugal. She's the deputy in chief for DJ Mag in North America, and she's living in Lisbon. And she made the effort to come all the way to Miami to be with us. And as presented before, we have Christiana from Alegria. She's
Hi, everyone.
one of the partners, definitely one of the most prominent managers for Afro House music. As everybody knows, she represents Black Coffee, artists like Temba, Pablo Fierro, Angelos, who are, I think, some of the most influential names in the genre. To her right, we have one of my favorite Afro House artists.
Hello, everyone.
His name is Night Freak, representing Zimbabwe, representing the continent of Africa. He's with us. And today I can say he's had some of the most prominent records in the genre in these past 2 years, and he's gonna be with us. So I want to give a big round of applause for him. And we have the founder of the most influential record label, indisputably, of Afro House, Mo Black Records. His name is Mimo, and I want to give a big round of applause for him. He's coming all the way from Italy, and he's here with us to give us some insight on how he's seen the genre grow over the past 10 years and to give us some insight on the opportunities he's given some of the artists over the years. So, all panelists, if at any point in time you'd like to place a comment or interrupt the conversation, please feel free to do so. We don't need to follow like a specific order in terms of the conversation. But we'll begin here with Andrew, who, as I mentioned, he's seen genres come and go. He's seen trends come and go from techno music to tech house to EDM. And now I'd like to get his insight on how he sees Afro House in the next 5 years. And I'd like to hear what his insight can be for the industry to support this music coming from Africa.
Thanks, Francis. For me, I think that it kind of cyclically kind of always comes back to house music. Every, say, 6 or 7 or so years, it kind of all comes back to, eyes closed on the dance floor, like feel good house music. And I think that, Afro house and the kind of like Latin flavors and different flavors of house now coming back is kind of right on cycle. It's kind of, kind of comes from after like a long period of time of kind of things starting to feel kind of the same, or just like people feel like a change coming. It always kind of comes back to house. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now. This is a little bit different, obviously, than the past, but there's a lot of 90s house and piano tracks and vocals, and just kind of like a lot of kind of throwbacks to kind of feel good dance floor house music.
What do you think the industry could do to support more Afro House artists on the live aspect or festivals in general? Do you have any insight you could give industry peers? And have you been observing some trends of relevance in the past few years?
I think that it's just kind of really coming up or already has on its own. I think that festival buyers and just kind of all kind of artist brands are all kind of, just including a lot of Afro artists on all their lineups. And as it is. I think it's really growing really quickly and is in a really good place.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for your insight. And Joe, I think
Yes.
as mentioned, you being one of the first to believe in Afro House, what are your in the United States? What are your in or I think perspective? What are your contributions? What do you foresee to contribute to releasing and having the American audience kind of discover the genre?
Yeah, for me, it's like a bigger picture thing. I think African music in general has influenced so many genres over the last 100 years. I mean, pretty much every genre of new American music actually goes back to Africa, right? So also like to think about that when I think about how it's influenced it on the dance side as well. So with Afro House, we've seen it over the past 10 years kind of started to take off here. It's been around for longer, obviously, and we know that. But it all goes back to kind of people's desire to, this like Andrew was saying, house music, simple 4/4 beat comes from your heartbeat, and being back, thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, being in drum circles, so the percussive elements that you find in Afro House. And I think people are, who have started to graduate and they're listening at education and dance music. They start with the harder stuff, more intense stuff all over the place, and then they kind of bring it back down to the roots of it. So Afro House is really about the roots of dance music, is how I see it. So you see the kind of the generation of listeners who came in the 2010s, with the Swedish Houses of the world or Skrillexes of the world, now starting to understand really what Afro House is all about, which is the core of dance music, which is good, fun time house music, and the simple drum beat with great percussion elements. Like I said, it goes back to that. And then can you remind me on the second part?
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
see what are your A&R perspective?
Hmm.
What's your insight on Afro House producers? What are the efforts that Insomniac Records
Yeah.
is planning on doing to kind of expand, or if you guys have any insight for the genre
For
to grow in the US?
Yeah. On the U.S. side, doing the record with you with Blondish 2 years ago was a big, I would say, a pillar, moment, and getting more ears and listeners in the U.S. on the genre, alongside stuff Black Coffee's doing and others, and Unite Freak, making moves over here. So, on the A&R side, we're heavily going in on trying to find new artists doing it. We also want to be making sure we're representing the genre correctly and actually choosing artists that look like the genre. That's important for us. We want to, we know it's gone beyond that at this point, right? But we want to make sure we're also representing. That's important for me. And looking at all sides of it, male, female, black, white, everything that we can do that's representative of the genre, because it's gone global at this point.
Yeah, I think that's something really important to really look into the international community and to give opportunities beyond the US, both on the live side, on the label side, and most importantly, as we move on to the next question with Megan, on the press side. So at DJ Mag, I think that's one of the most read electronic music magazine of all time. For me, I've read DJ Mag magazines like 20 years ago. She's kind of crazy, huh?
I know it's been around. Yeah, it's for
How
so
many
long.
years?
I want to say I should know this. We just did 30 years of top 100 DJs for the poll, so it's been around longer than that. The poll started after the magazine had come out, so it's in its 30s.
So from a press perspective, I know you had a piece dedicated to Major League DJs.
Yeah, that was the UK. The UK magazine had them on the cover.
So for North America, do you see any trends? Do you have any insight? Can you give some input on the genre, its growth, what you recommend for producers to do? What do you recommend for avid fangoers?
Yeah, in terms of getting press coverage?
Or in terms of trying to propel and push the genre forward? I think the conversation that we really want to see is how can we contribute to make something that we all love become bigger than it is?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the great thing about media is it's an educational platform, really. So you find the right ambassadors who can talk about the genre and then more people are going to know about it. I think in general, I think the media right now too is really keyed in on wanting to focus on some of these artists that we haven't seen a million times. I mean, I know, and I'll be the first to admit we get some criticism when Top 100 comes out because it is a very tends to be a very white male poll. It's a vote, so it's a global vote that generates that poll. But people all the time are like, why is it always the same people? Why is it always the same faces? I think a lot of that is that people. I mean, we need to educate. So the artists need to actually get out and do some of that press. But I think the good thing is there are a lot of opportunities for that. We're looking to spotlight more people that we haven't seen a million times. I know I don't want to write about the same artists that I have to write about every single year. So I think in terms of pushing it forward, I mean, the labels definitely can play a big role in that. I think having a publicist that's really familiar with the sound and really knows how to share that with people is really big. I mean, our front line is usually going to be the publicists and the labels. Those are the people who are coming to us and pitching us. So get them more active, get them in our inboxes, and we're going to write about that. I think also too, though, it always comes back to the music. Like if the music is really amazing, it's going to shine through. I mean, major league DJs, they're massive, right? Like I feel like they're such an entry point for a lot of people in this space. So, I mean, that's a great thing. Like that's a great ambassador to have. We all know, we've all seen Black Coffee. I mean, I feel like for a lot of us, that's probably one of the first big Afro house artists that we became familiar with. Those ambassadors, those people who run labels, they're going to be able to bring in the new guys. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to expose that sound from the ground up.
Definitely. I think something perhaps from my perspective, I think it would be interesting to see DJ Mag perhaps venture off and maybe organize a showcase or showcases in parts of Africa
Absolutely.
beyond Johannesburg. Have you guys done something in Johannesburg?
I honestly, I'm not on the like event activation side as much, so I would have to ask that team. But we are building new partnerships in other parts of the world, specifically looking for those venues and those spaces that would be interested in partnering. So if you know of people, I can always pass that along.
With pleasure. And I think, when we speak about Afro House, there's a lot of emphasis in South Africa. And I think Africa is really vast. There's
Yeah.
North Africa, and that's humongous. Like countries like Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. There's a big Afro House community over there. So I think it's important that we consider, and definitely when we speak about the events, I think it'd be interesting to look at.
Yeah. I think they'd be super interested in it too. I think we want to diversify. We want to be able to be seen as it's a global brand, so we should be representing global music. And I think we do that very well in the print platform. I think if you go beyond Top 100, which is the one that I feel like a lot of people know, I mean, there's always so much representation for artists all over the place. We just had someone from Nigeria in the last issue. And yeah, I've written Zikente out of, he's in Lisbon. He's amazing. Also, living in Lisbon has like really opened my eyes up to just how much cool music is coming out of like Angola and Mozambique. And
Indeed,
yeah, it's amazing.
there's a huge Afro House community from Angola.
Yeah, totally. And it's I love yeah, it's a vast continent like you said, and every part of it has its own flavor and there's so much to dig into. And I think on a media from a media standpoint, that's super exciting because if we can educate people about what those little nuances are, then that's like super fun for us, but also you get to kind of bring that up in the world.
Yeah, something unique.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for all of your insight. I think this is for the future of Afro House. I'd like to look into the history of Afro House, and for me, there's no one better to give us some insight on how she's seen the genre grow from the ground up to where it is today. So, Christiana, without any further delay, I'd like to know what has been your journey representing artists like Black Coffee, Pablo Fierro, Angelos, Temba, and being the founder of a partner at Alegria.
Yeah, I think it's always about finding that perfect exposure, but at the same time, not boxing artists as African. I think that's something that, kind of puts us behind in a way. Like, look at the Grammys, for instance. they've created this category for African artists, but there's not a UK category. There's not, a European category or, so on. So why are we boxing all of these artists together? Why can't we all compete on the international scale? So I think that's one thing that for me, it's, pushing the culture forward. And that all comes from authenticity. And I think, sitting up here with artists like yourselves, who's more authentic than artists that have lived, breathed, and, worshipped that sound and gone through all of these phases of life. Going back to Black Coffee, he started his career as a jazz musician. He went to school, he's properly credited there, and that's where it began for him. So he learned the roots of music, the core of things. And of course, the African continent in general, eats, breathes, and sleeps dance music. Like you said before, percussion is everything. And, being there this week as well, you see this in the streets. Everyone is just proudly African. And I think that is where this momentum came from. I think leaders like Black Coffee, like Temba, like yourselves, being able to put this to the masses, but also keeping that authentic feel, that's what has gotten us to this point and why it's excelling so much.
Do you have any insight for artists that are trying to break through? Over the years, have you seen any trends that you think could be important to mention at this panel?
I mean, again, I think authenticity is at the forefront of everything. If you are not authentic to yourself and to what you feel, then why make music? And you can feel that, when there's music that comes out, sometimes it can feel very forced. And I'm not saying you need to be African to make Afro house. That's not it, but you need to.
I think that's really important
Yeah.
to note.
I mean, I think it's obviously the culture has brought us here, but why can't an American artist make Afro house? It's just understanding where the roots are and how to grow from that point.
Definitely. Thank you for your insight. And you mentioned something that's really important, the aspect of not boxing the community, not boxing the genre, kind of expanding it as part of global music. I think that's really important. So next up, we have Night Freak from Zimbabwe. I'd like to know, when did you first start listening to Afro House? How have you observed the evolution of the genre across the years? And what's your take on the current trending style of Afro House?
I started listening to Afro House in 2010. Prior to that, I used to produce anything from hip hop, R&B, till I found myself in indulging in Afro House, basically because everyone was listening to that. Your South African radio stations were playing that. It was a big thing. House music has always been big in Africa. Prior to it being big this side, and this side was EDM. Back then, EDM wasn't that big in 2010. So that's when I started listening to Afro House, listening to the Black Coffees on YFM, 5FM, the Glenn Lewis's, the Vinny Da Vinci. There's so many people that you guys haven't heard of that actually were the founders of this genre. The guys that you see now, it's like the third generation of Afro House. So me listening to that, then 2015, I met a guy from South Africa that had been working at Soul Candy, one of the founders of house music labels in South Africa. That's how I got into producing music, putting it out. And then for me, I felt like I could do Afro House because I could do it so much without getting paid. And doing it so much because it's love, and I'm not doing it because I just want to be famous. It's love. I can do it so many times, and it's from where I'm from, it was weird me making it because other people were making hip hop and it wasn't a famous thing to do, And then I'm there trying to convince everyone, yo, there's something like this, and it took time. It took time, and I'm happy to be where I am today. And to your second question, when it comes to trends, I feel like the trends that you guys are hearing now, it's because people are afraid to be different. If you come up with something that's working, I'll definitely do that because I'm afraid that people are not gonna like what I'm making, and it's been tried and tested. So if we keep on doing the same thing, there's not really going to be much Afro house in the next coming 3, 4, 5 years. We need to let people create because they love what they're doing, not because somebody else is doing something that works. So you need to really labels, especially and A&Rs. They need to have an open mindset to what other people are doing, not just because something is working because Kind Music is playing it or Black Coffee is playing it. Everyone needs to make that. So if you're not open-minded as much, you're not gonna really hear much of it in the next coming 5 years because it's all gonna be repetitive. Everyone is gonna try to sound like me or Francis or Kind Music, So it really limits and puts a ceiling to the genre on itself. So when it comes to the trends, I feel like labels A&Rs they need to be a bit more open-minded. That's what I feel.
I think fans as well.
I wouldn't say fans as well because people consume so much music now. People are open minded, but what record labels push because they have the power to put music in front of people in
Yeah.
terms of promo, marketing. But people, when you're at the club, if you play whatever you're playing, the label has nothing to do with what you're playing.
Yeah.
It's basically what I like and what I feel will work at that point in time. But what you're putting on Spotify, iTunes, that's based on people.
So you're saying like the industry as a whole, like the tastemakers, the
True.
A&Rs and whatnot. Okay.
True.
I think point taken. And where do you see the genre being in a few years? How do you see yourself coming from Africa and being so well received globally? What's your take? What has been your challenges? Where can you see some improvement in the industry as a whole?
Like I said prior, I feel like we just need to be more open-minded so that it grows and it doesn't become repetitive. And for me, I feel like Afro House right now it's in between being commercial, pop music because of the samples that we're using, and being underground, whereby we're having vocalists from South Africa, Nigeria, France. I feel like if you stick to being original and have everyone be involved, the writers, the vocalists, and not just take samples from old songs and have more original music out there, then yeah, we have a chance.
And on the touring side, how have things been? Completing your first two big international tours. What's been your take on where the genre is?
Um, the places like when I went to India, there's some places that are still so much tech oriented that people are still trying to figure out what really the sound is, right? And some of the shows that I played last year, it's basically me going to teach people music. Like you are trying to convince people that this is the it thing, this is what's gonna pop, this is what's popping out there. So it's been good, bad at some points, whereby some people are still so much into tech, they're not really willing to receive or really reciprocate what you're trying to make them listen to. So it's always 50-50. But now the second tour, when I go back to those places, it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really expanding today. And yeah, I think the next question from Mo Black, Italy's very own Mo Black. So, what inspired you to start an Afro House record label 10 years ago?
Okay, long story. I was living in Ghana. It was 2003, and I start to make my own production initially, start to send to the label. But at the time, I couldn't find any label interested, not even a feedback or always ignoring, my sound. So I said, okay, that means I have to create my own label. I really feel like it was the right things to do. And actually, it was because the reason why then I have the same name as artist and the label, because also my intention was to create something that really represent me, not only my own production, but also to give eventually a platform for others artists, because this what I had in mind was exactly something different what was at that time considered Afro House. In fact, we could honestly call it a different names because now, after 10 years, you see now the genre it's something else, you know. So, but initially, when you do something new, it's really difficult to find somebody who have your own vision, and also to find the right collocation in the store, you know, because sometimes when you do something, it's not really the same. They find difficulties to tag your music if it's Afro, if it's um, uh,
Techno.
soulful, techno, you know. In fact, initially it was more soulful, was more tribal. And then gradually, you know, a little bit of electronic injection. Now it is what it is in more melodic. It's going to change again because this is the thing. Music will be always alive when you always are able to give innovation. If we did not work at that period around this new experimenting new sound, probably we were not here now to discuss, and probably this genre could not become so big because honestly, soulful Afro is cool, but it's not really for the dance floor. In fact, when I started, I remember one promoter from Ibiza said, this music will never work in Ibiza because it's for pre-party, cocktail party. I understand because at that time, the mentality was, you know, always for people thinking that that was the Afro house. But for me, I was already thinking what is now the Afro house. So that's why my also consistency to keep on releasing after week from 10 years now. I have more than almost 600 releases. I think I made a good selection and to push the sound where it is now. Yeah, at this also, I was also sure that if giving a little bit more techno, I could reach younger audience, and the younger audience is the future, is at the market, you know, it's the future. So actually, I realized that we reached there like just 2 years ago because this is something really new. Before the pandemic, Afro House was not at this level.
Yeah, I think there's been a big change the past 2-3
It's
years.
just recently, you know. The first time I noticed the change in Appalade, we had the showcase in my own label showcase with the Notre Dame, with Mr. Raoul K. was in Paris. We had the sold out. We are coming out from the pandemic. Was still some restriction. But the first time where I played in front of the young teenager, you know, was the first time because before Afro House was more for adult people, more for
Absolutely.
and I realized that yes, now, you know, the game will change.
I think nowadays there's the genre attracts a very young audience.
Yeah, I kind of want to. You hit on something, and I was just talking about this. Post pandemic, yes, like the sound was so big, and I noticed this a lot in talking to producers themselves, but also just in friends and fans. I think people after being cooped up were so hungry for a sound that made them feel like they were somewhere else. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's my like woo woo yoga, but it was really like a lot of people were like, oh, I wanted to like create this music that could take people on a journey, something more transportive. And I think that going back to the percussion and going back to like the history and the roots
Absolutely.
of this, I think that there is something so almost like primordial about like the way that we wanted to be far away, but we couldn't. We were like in our little
But to
apartment.
this day, I think the biggest Afro House records and the Afro House DJs, when they play a set, it takes you somewhere else. It takes you back to the roots. It makes you travel, and I think the genre really embraces different sounds, different cultures, different languages today. Right?
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it just it exposes people to something that maybe they hadn't even considered as music. I mean, you're saying that young people wouldn't have even showed up in Ibiza to something like this, and now it's the flavor. Like it's what people want. It's cool.
One strong, sorry. Now this is I think it's important. I think now it's more and more stronger. I think it's grow even further because we all feel connected from everywhere we come from. There is this ethnic elements that everyone feel connected. Before was most of the song in English, no. Now we release Arabic language, we release Indian, we release Spanish, Brazilian. So when we play, there is always a mixed crowd because today, wherever you go, there is not only local people dancing, there is always international audience. And this is also, actually our music now is reflecting the reality where we live now, you know, mixed culture, and our music is very reflecting what is the society. And with this mixed sound, not only with the local speech idioma, it makes something also different and original and special, you know, something never heard before. Even if we don't understand the lyrics, but doesn't matter because the feeling is so good, the vibes, and it's because I mean, when you want to dance, you want to the sound. I think it's everything, the sound. And if you know also the meaning, yes, it's good, but it's not necessary. It's important. It's the vibe, no?
The melody.
The melody, the vibe, and I think there is everything. There is feeling, there is emotions, there is enough deepness, and then of course it's also a lot of diversified. There is more classic, deep, underground, and melodic techno. You know, you can still have your own set playing Afro house, but taking them to a journey where you want. But this is, I think, that's one of the strongest parts of our genre.
I was gonna say as well, I think African music in general, it's just so timeless. You know, there's a lot of music from way back, a lot of, you know, that it's being resurfaced now. There's a label in South Africa called Gallo. It's been around for like 100 years now, and they've released some of the greats in the beginning. And now they're resurfacing the catalog and, you know, doing remixes, and people are still digesting it the same way or better. So I think that's another thing that really excels this genre. You know, the culture is timeless, the sound is timeless. So, you know, you can keep excelling even as the times change. The music can still flow with what's going on in the world.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, it's organic music. If you listen in 10 years, it's still fresh, sounds still fresh. And also, I notice people are now picking and listening my back catalog of 10 years ago. I have tracks still selling great because now it's like discovering. And also, again, as we said, it's so sounds always fresh. And this is also, I think, important.
Okay. Well, thank you to every single one of you for your insight. Now we're going to move to Q&A. So this is your chance to ask us anything that comes to mind. Does anyone have any questions? We'll start with him.
Hi, everyone. First of all, welcome, and then thank you for being here for this beautiful seminar for all of us who all do produce and DJing. And then thank you for giving the insight of all the Afro house tunes. I have a question. Lately, the genre is moving such a way. It goes to the so many old school songs, 80s, 90s, come back to the Afro rhythms or Afro house production. I love it. We love it. When we play, crowd love it. I like that. But it's also giving some, as you say, little boxing, you know, so we cannot push ourselves to create something new. Because when we do that, I'm not accusing any of you here, all the labels, but like you don't listen, you know, you don't say, oh, you know what, this is not selling anyway. This is not the popular. People, they are not listening this. Everybody likes to hear the Dario remix or whatever, you know. I like that, but this is really blocking our production.
200%. I think Night Freak touched on this. I think the future and how to combat that is for producers, the guys who are creating the records, to be willing to take the chances, and most importantly, the labels, the tastemakers, the curators, to give a chance to new music, to give a chance to creativity.
No matter what we do, you guys are the making decision. You guys are the pushing and then bringing the things on the floor. What can be the next sound?
Absolutely. And I also think the fans are also very important. You know, fans have to be receptive to what's new. Take a chance, you know, get a ticket to see an artist that you may have not heard before. It's not because he doesn't have the most streams that it's not going to be good. I think it's a community effort to keep the genre at its peak, to keep the genre interesting, and to keep the creativity at the maximum.
Goes back to what Megan was saying as well about just educating the people, I think, because if you're stuck in this space, like you were saying, of old music that's being remixed, you know, you're not learning about these new artists, these new sounds. So how do we do that? We educate people. You brought up Major League DJs, for example. You know, that's the Amapiano sound. I remember the first time I saw them play here a few years ago, and you know, Americans didn't know what to do with it, but it was simply because they didn't know how to digest the music. And now you see, okay, this is cool. You know, it's feel good music. So people are understanding it, they're receiving it well, they're digesting it. So I do think it comes from education as well.
It's also a unique time, I think. In some ways, I feel like genres are starting to matter a little bit less. I think lineups are becoming a little bit more diverse. So if the promoters too are open to it and they can throw in some sounds that maybe aren't as familiar, then that also helps. And that keeps things open minded. Everybody learns from each other. It's cool.
Quick, I was just gonna add. I agree. Like a Britney Spears Afro House remix. Yeah, probably don't need it, but it'd be cool. But probably don't need it. But sample culture is also important because, like we've done with Francis on a couple of records and with Meme on some stuff, you're bringing back old samples that people may have never heard before and giving them new life. So we did the, you know, Amadou and Miriam together. That was, you know, for me growing up, that was one of my favorite songs when I was like, you know, 10 or 9 or whatever, young. And now giving a chance for that song to have a second life was also a pretty awesome experience. So there is times and situations where bringing back a sample, maybe a less familiar sample, and repurposing it in this genre does make sense. I just want to add that in there.
Yeah, I think as producers, you know when you're doing something wrong. You know when you're doing, you know, a remix of Britney Spears for a Afro House record. So preferably, I think artists have to be conscious.
I've gotten the demos. Don't worry.
Yeah. So I've been requested to play them as well. So I think it's important, you know, DJs, tastemakers. Obviously, you know, it's great to throw in some samples there and there on a production, throw in some samples there and there in a DJ set, but also giving a chance to the new track, trying to tease something unique. I think that's always important. We'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, hey guys. Just curious to know your thoughts on, you know, music is consumed on a retail level with, you know, Spotify and Apple Music. How do you guys think they're doing with their, you know, curated playlists for Afro House, Afro Tech to really represent the authenticity and I guess origins of the sound?
From my perspective, I think it's not underrepresented. I think at this point there's some effort done. You know, from time to time I'm seeing new playlists pop up specifically dedicated to Afro House. I myself, as a DJ, I don't necessarily look into what's trending on Beatport, for example, as I used to 5 years ago. I check Tantra playlists. I check, you know, the playlist generated by the algorithm, because I think the platforms have been beneficial to helping discovery. From my personal take, you know, I think the effort that's done, it's existing. I'm not saying it couldn't be better, but today you have playlists like Mint who are giving an opportunity to Afro House sounds. Like there's an artist that I'm very fond of from that's a neighbor of mine from the Dominican Republic called Wakian. His record is flying. You know, Mint has been supporting it for a long time. Night Freaks music, he's been on the cover of New Music Friday twice. So I think there is an effort. I think it could be better always, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to how fans show love to their favorite Afro House artists.
Yeah, you basically nailed it. Yeah, if the fans want it, I think Spotify, Apple, the DSPs will give it a chance, and I think they're doing a good job. I think you can always improve though.
And the same on the show level. You know, if you guys love your Afro House artists and you want to see them play more festivals, play more shows, I think the fans have to really make an effort and come out. Like, go to your favorite Afro House stage instead of, you know, your typical tech house, you know, stage. Make an effort to buy a ticket to something more unique. That's what it comes down to.
Tag the artist you like on a lineup. Say, why is this artist not playing? You know, And we at Insomniac, we read that. You know, we look at that carefully every time, you know, the EDC lineup comes out. I don't know if that's me or not, sorry. If the EDC lineup comes out and you don't, you know, there's an artist that's not on there that you want on there, put it in the comments. And we have someone, an intern looking at that and grabbing all those names.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. You want to pass him the mic?
Yeah, man. Thank you. So first of all, kind of like a comment that leads into a question based on what everyone has kind of said here. But first of all, obviously, thank you guys so much for this panel. Like listening to each and every one of you down the line, I was like, what's kind of the common like thread, right? Or like, what's the common idea that you guys are trying to, you know, sharing with us and helps to represent this genre? And I kind of think it is emotion, like all music, but I think it's kind of the emotional like hope and feeling good, right? And on the point of feelings, I'm from Jamaica, right? And I'm an Afro house producer as well. And for me, you know, reggae is obviously that kind in the similar feeling of that feel good, warm and fuzzy type of music. But if you know anything about Jamaican music, dancehall is kind of what the people listen to down there, right? But that emotion is more, I'd say it's more aggressive. You know, if you know dancehall music, it's a little more aggressive. And I was kind of struggling with that. Like, how do I take something that my people listen to, I grew up on, and make people feel the way that like I feel when I listen to Afro House records, Francis, Night Freak, you know, Mo Black. Like, how do I kind of translate that to kind of feel, you know, and almost like develop this emotion? But I think Night Freak, you kind of answered my question that I was having, because it's really just doing something that's unique to you, right? So not trying to kind of play this game of like, yo, I have to figure out how to make this sound like, you know, a record like yours, Francis, or Night Freak. But with that, the gentleman here who asked the first question. Yeah, yes, you, brother. But the gentleman asked the first question, like cutting through, I'd say cutting through the noise, right? Because there's so many records that are coming out, it's hard to get people's attention. I wanted to know for someone like me, again, the sound is kind of new with this dancehall sound, right? It's not going to be the typical thing that you hear of a reggae sample or Bob Marley thing. What are some of the things that you all, with your expertise and experience, have seen that can like cut through that if you're trying to push that new sound, right? I think you guys have done it, and I've seen people have done it or work with people who have done it. I know like the typical answers are, you know, like TikTok or something, but is there anything unique that you guys could share with us as a way to cut through pushing this new sound? Because you're at like the forefront of something when you're trying to push a new sound.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the track you're creating. It all comes down to the sample you're selecting. It all comes down to the music you're making. Like right now, someone that's sitting behind you, his name is Shimza.
Right.
He produced one of my favorite records today. You know, he sampled like an amazing track. And I think it all comes to what you're composing, what message you're trying to put forward, the timing of the release, you know, the way you market it is really important.
Right.
So from my perspective, like Meg mentioned, you know, I released big Afro House records right after the pandemic. People wanted something unique. People wanted to feel like they were traveling somewhere else, right? So when I came with Premier Gao, like a big African record, it was the right time. So if you're trying to cut through the noise and create something unique that's going to work, you have to kind of take a second to kind of study the market and kind of see like what's working, what's in trend today.
Right.
Can I make a song that's relevant to a movement? Can I make a song before the summer that's going to be a summer anthem? Do people want to like hear something from the 80s? You know, it's if you're sampling, that's my take. If you're creating original music,
Right.
you know, thinking of the dance floor is always important.
Right. Okay.
I hope that answered your question.
Authenticity.
Authenticity.
I always go back to that authenticity. If you're creating music that doesn't feel good to you, no one else is going to enjoy it either. You can feel when a song is forced, when a song, you know, when an artist is creating something that they don't believe in or they don't value. So I think that's at the forefront always.
It really comes through in the performance too. I mean, watching artists like Francis or another or Fullamore or just like this absolutely loving what they do on stage is just a real like refreshing break for people post pandemic to really feel like at these shows that they're a part of it. They really can get just absolutely lost in it again and just they're there for that specific purpose. And just watching those performances, they just get sucked in and feel like they belong.
Right. Okay. You touched on how do you break through. Like I feel like that's the one question that you didn't get an answer to. So with me, like how I managed to like put my music there, like with the other DJs and stuff.
Right.
What I would do, I would go on YouTube. You're from Jamaica, right?
Yeah. I'm from Jamaica.
So in every country has that one famous YouTube channel or the go-to guy that plugs music to the people, right? So in Zim, in my country, there was Madura in the house, Mo Black, Mr. Afro Deep. So when I would make music, like to test it out, I would send it to those YouTube channels,
Okay.
right? When I do send it to YouTube channels, I'll send it to my friends and everyone to see how people react to it prior to even thinking about the song going mainstream, right? And like, don't box yourself. Don't really look into what everyone is doing. No.
Right.
For me, how I create, like, if people have never heard it, that's the one.
Right.
That's the one. So, as for you to push your music, rather, if you want people locally in your area, just use those platforms that are tried and tested first. Then, when you feel like, okay, my sound is strong enough and I'm confident about it and I can do it over and over again, then you can move on to the mainstream DJs, send them demos. But I would advise you
Yes.
to start home with people that you know, then grow into it. Yeah.
Thank you. That's an amazing answer. Yeah, man.
We just had the Desiree on the North American cover. Yeah, she's amazing. But I loved her come up story is like she's blown up in the last few years, like, huge. And another South African DJ. But yeah, she started by like playing local barbecues. Like it was kind of like her thing. It was like a little like I forgot what you all probably know what it was called, but it's a kind of like a barbecue hang, and that was how she started to get to know people. I think her first DJing, like she didn't even know how to do it. Like she just got up there and kind of played with it. And then 3 years later, she's like one of the faces now of really representing a lot of that music coming out of South Africa right now, which is awesome.
Right.
So yeah, I think also too, it's like being willing to maybe show up at some things that you're not sure if it's good. Like you're not sure if you're going to get exposure. Maybe the right person sees you.
Yeah, you got to roll up your sleeves.
Yeah.
I mean, from my career, I've done it all. From being a promoter to being a local DJ to playing bars, and you got to put in the work on the music side, on the performance side, and it's every step of the way, the constant effort, the addition of it all will bring you to where you need to be.
Thank you, guys.
So I think we have a question all the way in the back.
It's not like as a question, but like answering him because I'm also upcoming producer. And I have a really good sentence that a guy called Andre, aka me, when I produced Only You, helped me a lot because I've always been like struggling. Oh, my music is not good enough unless that guy there. When I produced Only You, nobody wanted the track. I sent to a lot of people, and then that guy put everything on me, and Kind of Music started playing the track, and me texted me and said, "Do not worry what people think. If you dig the song, people will dig it." So it helped me a lot, like taking the stress out of me because I think we all come from this generation of like, oh, we need to do the sound of that little guy there, that he came up with like a sound that nobody understood the synth that he came up with, and it's crazy. Or Kind of Music just dropped bangers every day, and Shimza also, and Francis. And I think it helped me a lot also taking the pressure out of me. And if you dig the song and you really like it, just drop it and send over it. And people, at least one person in 7 billion will like it. And you start from there. That's what helped me a lot. Sorry, not a question, but this is what he helped me a lot. Like when he texted me, I'm a nobody, and he said, "Dig it, people will dig it." That's it.
Thank you. So, any other question over there? Yeah.
So I'm a artist and DJ from Seattle, American, Indian American, born and raised. And I'd be surprised if you guys played in Seattle because, as you may know, there aren't that much of an Afro house community, let alone Africans in Seattle, with a really burgeoning community. And my dad was also an artist, so when I came back to Seattle after COVID, I started my own collective there, and started doing events because clubs would not just book me for my own gigs, but even now I had to slowly kind of bring in or kind of intro them into Afro House. And I honestly call myself like an ethnic dance music artist or a global dance music artist, just to Christina's point about not boxing yourself in with kind of the current genre. But my question to you guys is, especially in the context of America and how America responds to Afro House, in a scene that's not really developed, not too many American born and raised Afro house artists, what are your, points of advice, maybe technical pieces of information, like things to keep in mind for growing into like these Seattles and San Diegos and Portlands and, Boston and kind of non-major cities and like tier 2 cities to grow the space there?
I would just say I think being authentic kind of keeps coming back as a theme here, but to just kind of start with what you have, start small, grow a community, find other local DJs like yourself that are really kind of pushing the sound, and just start local if you have to. If it's only 50 people, start wherever you are and just kind of grow at whatever pace is organic and start bringing in internationals when you can. There's no real reason to force it and do it overnight and really want to and compare yourself to other markets and other promoters. Just kind of grow it at the rate that feels good to you and to the community there, and really kind of just build something.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Make sure you film it too. Put it online. Throw the party, but make sure you film it.
We've done a few of those actually. Yeah.
That's gonna get a lot. I mean, I think Afro House in particular grew a lot out of COVID because it utilized social media, YouTube live sets, scenic backgrounds with this types of music, like cool intimate parties, which is, I think a lot of people out of COVID are like, they don't want to be in massive crowds anymore. They want to be in that cool intimate party. And Afro House really leverages that,
And every new sound started that way. It sounded as very DIY, local group of friends, and then brought in more people. And then a couple of people started driving up from Portland maybe for your shows, and it just started growing that way. Every kind of genre or subgenre in electronic music really kind of started that way as a community-based, kind of whatever structure works for the local scene there.
And I'd like to emphasize on starting small. That's really, really important. I think, it's better to sell out 100-person show than to have a half fill room of 500 people with just 200 people there,
Yeah, absolutely. And then people would really kind of where the vibes are high and people are all there. I'd rather 100 people in a packed room, it feels fantastic. 100 people in a 400 capacity room, is different. Having to like really promote super, super hard for something just to fill the room is different than starting a little bit smaller and kind of start with what you can fill, and and kind of go from there.
Just a little more context. In Seattle, I'm doing about 500 per show now.
Congrats.
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate
great.
it. Well, and the thing is that I've actually appreciate it, but like I've had to actually leave Seattle, and I still do shows there every year, but I'm now based in Brooklyn just to kind of continue growing the brand. Because one of the hurdles and kind of the ceiling that I hit was, I think you mentioned it earlier, is just like bringing in international artists. We've done what you said with taping it, building the collective, merchandising, branding, working with different clubs, getting that kind of reputation in. Where if we do an event, we have that immediate buzz. But I think like obviously production speaks volumes too. But I think booking talent as well, and even in my case as well, like to this man over here, and me downloaded a song of mine recently. But I'm a little scared once he starts playing it because I know that I won't be able to clear that sample as a small artist. So it's, I at least I've seen Alex Wan, kind of struggle through it with Milkshake. And I'm like curious how this will, in the context of like going from a small artist to really approaching the industry with working with bigger artists like yourself for shows or getting music cleared. So yeah, I don't know if that was a question, but just some 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be ready to accept no as an answer. You know, you have to be ready to fail. That's part of the game. And when you do get yes for an answer, it's gonna be some sunlight, you know? So you can't ever put a ceiling, put a level of pressure on yourself. You have to always expect the least, give it your very best, whether it be on organizing shows, whether it be on trying to clear a sample, whether it be on trying to release or getting somebody to play your song. And you should be all good. I mean, just have the faith, be authentic, pursue your dreams, and at some point it'll work out, I'm sure.
I'm kind of curious, Francis, because I don't know when you first started your Deep Root parties through the label in New York. Like, what did that look like?
It was actually it wasn't too bad because I had quite some background in event planning. I used to be a promoter before starting a record label, so we actually had like a yacht of like 300 people, like a boat, and we used to do summer boat parties. And
Okay, yeah, I remembered the boat parties. I wasn't sure if that was born of something.
yeah, that
smaller.
was I had access to the boat, and we were like, okay, you know what? I want to do a collective and do something about the music. At first, Deep Root was a house music collective. It wasn't even Afro house, and it's over the years, especially nearing COVID, I discovered just like Night Freak, Maduri's in the House, their YouTube channel and their playlist on Spotify, and I used to listen to that all the time. And I came across his music, and COVID happened, and I was like, okay, let me try something different in terms of my production. So I started making that kind of music. I reached out to him, and it came from there. And then Deep Root Tribe was born in my experience. So I think every form of experience over time is something that will contribute to your growth, even if it's not directly linked to the final outcome that you want to have. Try and connect with people. If you can intern in a bigger imprint, if you can work as an intern for a record label, whatever kind of activity and hustle you do within the industry, at some point it'll serve you. So I think, over the years, every single thing I learned, every single activity I've done has contributed towards my growth today.
Yeah, so following up to what you were saying, I had a question regarding label side. So I'm thinking of opening our own label soon, and one of the question is, if you receive a track with a sample that's not cleared, do you usually try to release it before getting cleared, or you release it and hopefully you get it clear after? Like for example, there's this guy, Peace Control. He did this remix of Peru of Fireboy DML, and he released it on Spotify. And then it was after it got a lot of traction that they managed to clear it, but after it was released on Spotify. So do you?
I think the track wasn't released on Spotify. I think they got it cleared before releasing it.
It was.
Okay,
a
potentially.
1,000%.
But the best way, in my opinion, you want to get the artist to play it. You want to get it streaming. You want to get videos of it. You want to really get it trending. And once there's interest and you have a proof of concept, and you're like, here's proof of 1,000 people going crazy to the song. Here's XYZ Reel. Here's XYZ TikTok. We have something that can potentially break through. Can you give us the rights? You go to the rights holders. That's the best way to do it.
So you release it on Spotify before clearing it?
Not
No.
necessarily.
As an artist yourself, think if someone was essentially stealing your music, because that's what it is. If you release a sample that's not cleared, you're stealing someone else's creation. So I think you have to put yourself in the artist position. How would you feel if someone, took a song and put it out there? I mean, maybe, I don't know. I guess everyone has a different perspective, but in this era where we are now, where it's about protecting your rights as an artist and, gaining anything you can from it, I think that answers the question.
Yeah,
I think you can put it as long as you're not monetizing it. You can, if you're putting it out on SoundCloud, free platforms, YouTube, and there's no monetization, you're not making money off of it. It's
or you
passable.
can like leak it to DJs to play it. After they play it,
Right.
after people play it, they're like, hey, I really appreciate your work, XYZ label, XYZ artist. Can you please, pretty please give me the rights to it? And repeat until they say yes. That's how it works. But also, I think something important I'd like to note is the way the people you speak to and how you network. I think that's really important. Instead of going to a record label being like, hey, I have 1,000 videos of your song being played, try to see if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone. That's, for me, that's always worked. Every single track I've been able to clear, a face-to-face meeting, bringing the sample owner to dinner, trying to meet the artist, attending their show, and like talking to them has worked wonders. Anytime you try to send a message, try to be slimy and try to be left field, it typically results in a negative outcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any questions? Additional questions? Okay, then. Well, thank you so much to every single one of you for coming out. To all the panelists that traveled across the oceans to be with us, and for all of your insight. It's been a pleasure. Thank you again, guys.